Greetings and salutations, friends, and welcome back to more Warhammer Fantasy lore, where today we are going to talk about werecreatures. Not, incidentally, to be mistaken for skin wolves, which we have covered before. Indeed, there is a great deal of debate going on amongst furry scholars, I suppose, about whether or not skin wolves are true werecreatures, or if they are simply creatures of chaos, or hell, if werecreatures themselves are creatures of chaos too, or if they are some form of stable biological mutation, or whether they are a magical curse, or whether there is an epidemiological explanation to the werecreatures. But before we get too lost in the weeds, let us begin then with what a werecreature is, starting with what kind of werecreatures exist. In the Warhammer world, there are a fair few different variations of werecreatures, which are defined as human beings that can take on the form, or the hybrid form, or even both in some cases, of an animal. The werecreatures we know for a fact to exist are werewolves, werebears, wereboars, wererats, and werecats. There are also legends of a different type of werecreature akin to the werecat, but it is unclear whether or not it is truly another werecreature, or simply a form of a beastman, as it is located solely in the far eastern ends of the Warhammer Old World continent. These are the were-tigers. At first glance, it might not seem to be too much of a stretch to assume that the nature of the werecreature is dependent to some degree on their geological location. Entirely possible, especially if it has to do with magic or some sort of chaos curse. But it is also important to point out that, quite famously so, the beastmen of the Far East resembles tigers and cows rather than the goats of the old world. So it is not only possible, but probably quite plausible that what was perceived to be a were-tiger by some Western adventurer or explorer was instead simply just a beast-man, which, again, should not be mistaken for a were-beast, as the key core defining feature is the ability to transform back and forth between the two or possibly three forms. This is where we get into the debate as to whether or not skin wolves are true werecreatures or something else entirely, as the majority, but not all, werecreatures have three forms, where they can be a man, a full animal, although it usually one of prodigious size, or an amalgamation of the two, a la the classic werewolf form. The degree of control over which the individual were has over his transformation, and over the forms after he has transformed, varies significantly. There are those who can change into an animal or an anthropomorphic animal at will, whereas others are forced to transform due to external circumstances, such as lunar phases, for example, or due to being in a violent situation, causing their transformation from man into beast. It would be a lot easier to try and figure out what exactly a werecreature was if there was some sort of predictability in all of this, but there is none. There are, for example, members of various Norscan tribes that can turn into werewolves and wolves that are different from skinwalkers, as they don't forget everything they did whilst being a wolf. They remember it. They even have agency and control over the beast's actions. But they are influenced by their new bestial instincts to run loose and to kill. But they could theoretically choose not to. There are also indeed werecreatures within civilized society that do choose not to, that view their bestial forms as not a mad killing machine running around slaughtering women, children, and livestock, but rather as an expression of freedom, as an opportunity to become something different, but not inherently violent. In other words, whilst they become more bestial, they do not sacrifice the entirety of their humanity when doing so. But there are still others who do lose control, either because they actively surrender it, as is the case with many northern tribes, or because the wolf, the bear, the rat, or whatever else is inside of them is simply too strong to resist. So there doesn't seem to be any one rule fits all, nor does there appear to be a rule specifically for a certain type of werecreature. This lack of consistency seems to suggest that there is something magical about the condition, some sort of a curse or an effect of chaos, especially as there are far more identified werecreatures in the northern parts of the old world than in the south. Although this could also simply be because in the civilized world, if you're a werecreature, you're not going to tell anyone. As even if you are one of the blessed ones that retain full control of your actions and over your agency even whilst in a bestial form, well, good luck convincing the witch hunters of Sigmar about that. But immediately then, we also have an indicator of something other than magic, as being a werecreature appears to be hereditary, as is the case of Bjorg Bearstruck, who, as his name quite clearly indicates, is a werebear. His family has had 15 consistent generations of werebears. It has become such a consistent feature of the Norscan tribe that they are now known as the tribe of the bear, and bear the bear upon their bear banners. That's a lot of bees. Anywho, as you can imagine, this makes the tribe of the bear a formidable adversary, one that easily conquered the majority of the smaller Norscan tribes surrounding them, including, it is alleged, several other tribes of werecreatures as well, as there are records indicating that the tribe of the bear warred with and defeated the tribe of the wolf. Now, this might simply just be yet more fanciful Norscan nonsense, and they may not have been werewolves, but Bjorg is also famous for killing the twin wolf cubs of the leader of the tribe of the wolves, so yeah, they were probably an entire tribe of werewolves. After defeating all the local opposition, however, the bear men of Urslo decided to join forces with the other chosen as he headed south to get his ass beat, and ever since, the bear men of Urslo have been lending out their services to anyone willing to pay them in gold, silver, and fresh meat. But the mere fact that we can see a hereditary aspect to werecreatures does not mean that they can't also be magical, or indeed be entirely magical, as there are several other examples in the Warhammer world of magic that affects entire bloodlines. So we're not going to be entirely ignoring that possibility just yet. There are also allegations that the were-creature curse is something that can be passed down to others. The theory of lycanthropy, for example, suggests that werewolves can pass on their genes via their bites. And so when someone is attacked by a werewolf and survive, they themselves will become, in time, a werewolf. There doesn't seem to be an enormous amount of data backing up this theory, however, and in all due likelihood it is simply a fanciful idea dreamt up by a scholar or a magician somewhere in order to try and explain away a sudden spreading of lycanthropy. As there have been incidents where entire villages have suddenly turned into ferocious monsters, or have been revealed by witch hunters to be covens of werecreatures living within the borders of the Empire. The theory then is that one werewolf infiltrated the society and upon being discovered went on a rampage, biting and attacking other members of that community, thus turning them into werewolves. This is a hopeful interpretation that is considerably less likely than it simply having been a community of werecreatures to begin with, as we know for a fact that such communities do exist. In the north, obviously, we see things like the tribe of the bear and possibly the tribe of the wolf. In the cases of Norsca, individuals who have the ability to transform into werecreatures are of course highly valued, practically worshipped in fact. And so a vast gathering of werecreatures would have followers flocking to their side, hoping to join in their conquests. They would, in other words, be accepted by Norscan society. Thus, villages of werecreatures forming would happen quite natural. In the south, however, it is the precise opposite, but to much the same effect. A werecreature in the Empire would know very well indeed that he would not be accepted by any of the people around him, and so would either have to live a solitary existence, always hiding and fleeing whenever his secret was exposed, or, through happenstance, planning, or effort, find groups of similar creatures and band together in groupings where they don't need to hide their gifts from one another. And as humans, as well as wolves, rats, bears, etc., are rarely truly solitary creatures, it makes a great deal of sense for them to congregate in communities of similarly abled critters. We even see this effect amongst certain groupings mistaken for werecreatures, such as the Children of Ulrich. Now, the Children of Ulrich, again, are not werecreatures. They are either a very stable mutation in their own right, or, as legend states, they are actually the descendants of the god Ulrich. Far from impossible. There are significantly crazier things in the old world, but as they do not change, they are not werecreatures. But, once more, good luck explaining that to the witch hunters. And so obviously they stay on the fringes of society and or simply build their own. Now, the precise communal nature of werecreatures would also probably be determined by the type of werecreature. Werebears, for example, tend to be significantly more solitary, but can occasionally congregate in larger gatherings, as we've seen with the tribe of the bear. Werewolves, too, are relatively rare creatures to come across in packs, although it too has happened. And there has even been occasions of skin wolves gathering in extended communities, although near exclusively in the far north, as skin wolves Well, to put it rather bluntly, there's nothing civil about their transformation. And so, maintaining a decent town is going to be pretty gosh darn challenging. Meanwhile, something like a Wererat would probably be highly communal, if there even is such a thing as Wererats, as their existence could easily be explained away by the Skaven as well. Not the transformation from a human to a half-human, half-rat or a giant rat, of course, but the sighting of a thing that walks like a man but looks like a rat. And with it simply being a myth in the majority of the Empire, it's easy to see how the legend of a Wererat might be created. A bit more difficult to explain this way would of course be Werecats, who also tend to be very communal, either with one another or other cats. Things like the great cats of the Empire, for example. Were communities could also be created for another darker reason, as it is a known fact, especially amongst the Norscan werecreatures, that many of them simply go stark raving mad, and either lose the ability to de-transform into a human being, or lose all will to do so, growing more and more into an animal every day that passes, until they either join up with other groups, warbands in essence, hunting parties, of werecreatures stalking the land, or many even simply become animals themselves, wolves of unusual size, or huge brutish bears that pose enormous dangers to nearby settlement of civilized people, sending out huge parties of warriors and hunters to finally bring the menace to an end, only for the beast, once finally put down, to transform into a much smaller man. Quite a few monsters of legends have no doubt faded into obscurity due to this. Huge creatures terrorizing the countryside, brought down only for the poor hunter to be denied any proof or prize of their great deed. And, I mean, if you come back to town, hauling the desiccated, starved body of a man, claiming it to be the body of the bear the size of a coach cart, you're probably going to get laughed at, rather than showered with praise and rewards. This might be another explanation why there is so little truly known about werecreatures, as even though there have been examples of highly educated and erudite individuals becoming werecreatures, even full-on magicians in fact, they never stop to document their experiment, to write books, to study themselves, to delve deep into the mystery of their own being, despite it being in their very nature to do so. Perhaps it's simply because, after so many nights passed prowling the fields, hunting deer and the occasional drunk out at night, that it no longer seems so very important anymore. That the next full moon seems a far more pressing priority than study. Maybe. Or it could also simply be because, whilst originally there were a lot of werecreatures, Warhammer Fantasy has undergone some revisions in between then and now, to the point where I believe in the strictest possible speaking definition of modern day Warhammer Fantasy, there's only really bear men and skin wolves left, with all the others having either been simply forgotten about or haven't been mentioned for a very, very long time. And you know what? Maybe that's for the best. Warhammer needs a little bit of mystery here and there, and if Games Workshop doesn't even remember that there was a mystery to begin with, then they can't Grey Knights it either. Until next time, I have been Arch. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope to see you all again soon. Till then, have a good day.